see so many people here. We've got quite a lot to tell you today. A lot of things have happened, a lot of things have changed. Not just as far as Stonehenge is concerned, but everywhere really, right around the world. And that's going to be one of the main themes of today. The fact that the international situation is such that it's time for the whole Stonehenge issue, and it has many sides, to be broadcast far and wide, because we haven't got very far with our efforts to publicise what's going on in this country, although we've made some ground. The issues around Stonehenge can basically be broken down into three main areas: spiritual, cultural and political. The spiritual side of it is that there are a large number of people in this country, very green-minded people, who have been for much longer than a lot of the people on the new green bandwagon, who see Stonehenge as a very important link with the past, as a temple, as an astronomical calculator, and that's why we go down there for the equinoxes and the solstices, because what they are is the turning of the seasons. And that's really important to be aware of which season it is. It governs life, it governs growth, it governs the way we feel, it governs the amount of light and energy that falls on the planet from the sun. Those are all things that have very important effects on everyone and on all life. The cultural one is that because of the gatherings that started happening at Stonehenge in the mid-70s and which continued until 1985, there came about a group of people which sometimes calls itself family. Not everybody shares the same views within that family. There's a lot of arguments, but there's a basic link between everyone that comes from having done a lot of really important things at Stonehenge over a very long period of years. A large focus of that is the travelling community. It used to be called the Peace Convoy. We fortunately left that term behind. And what's been happening with the authorities preventing people from gathering at their traditional once-a-year meeting place is a grave abuse of human rights. The reason that Stonehenge became so important to particularly travellers is if you travel, you're on the road all year, you're in small groups, you get dispersed, you move around. The only place you can actually find all your friends and relations and all the people that you know is if you all arrange to be somewhere once a year at a particular time, and that was what Stonehenge was about culturally. The reason it came about was partly because of the spiritual thing. Politically, the measures that have been employed over the years to keep people away from Stonehenge have become so draconian that it's hard to believe they're happening. Now, with me on this table we have a number of people who represent very, very different views, who all come under this umbrella of, if you like, the Stonehenge campaign. We prefer parasol because of the connotations with sun. So Stonehenge campaign is a parasol organisation. I'll just introduce now the people who we've got. Lynn is a traveller who lives on a bus with her family, has lots of kids, and has been part of the scene for a very long time and knows all the problems of being on the road and all the advantages. Don, on my left, is from an organisation called Travellers' Aid Trust, a registered charity set up in the wake of what happened at the Battle of the Beanfield in 1985 and what happened at Stony Cross in 1986, when several hundred families had their homes taken away from them and never given back. Rick Hope is going to speak on behalf of the campaign and put forward the plan of action that we have for this year. And Rollo Moffling is a member of the Glastonbury Order of Druids. He's also got another title which I can never remember because it sounds so grand. And he'll explain that to you when he speaks. It's worth pointing out very quickly a number of things. First of all, we had to pay for all that food, and any donations that you can give me out, you're welcome. It's a condition of hiring the room. Secondly, just to say a little bit about myself, I edit a magazine called Festival Eye. I've spent some time on the road, and I'm very angry about what's been happening. I've put a lot of time and energy into trying to do something about it, which is what campaigning is all about, really. Copies of last year's Festival Eye are up there. Actually went out through Smith's last year, but we'll be doing so again this year, with a bit of luck. Okay. If I can turn over now to Lynn. Say hello, please.
Right. Well, I'm a traveller. There are projects when there are lots of different types of travellers. I'm to do with the showman's aspect of it, and that we put on festivals, we put on the entertainments, and all that sort of thing. There are a lot of other travellers who do other things and don't necessarily go to festivals. There's a lot of people who go to festivals who live in towns and cities, and all through the summer season, there used to be anyway, smaller events. And Stonehenge was like the big one where everybody got together. And being at the summer solstice, you know, it's such a good time to meet friends and relations, your family and everything else. And we've had this missing 5 years now. And there are some people I haven't seen for 5 years, you know, because you've missed them, you know, on the road somewhere. And I feel quite strongly that we need an annual gathering, a big one. I'd like to have it at Stonehenge. In the meantime, I think that Stonehenge is also very important to people who have religious inclinations, and I think it is quite important to keep up this campaign. I think it is totally wrong for the authority to be crushing both the access to the stones and the festival. But I think it is quite important to make a difference between the opening of the stones and the festival. You know, they are two distinct things, or certainly from my point of view. What else can I say?
What's it like being on the road?
What's it like being on the road? It's getting worse. The legislation that is hitting us these days is quite phenomenal. You know, the Public Order Act is the main one. And shall I just explain a little bit how it directly affects us, the Public Order Act? On site, a policeman comes along and says, right, you're off. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. If the policeman is wrong, you have to go to court afterwards and show that the policeman is wrong, by which time he's somewhere else. The only option you've got other than moving is being arrested, which means that basically you're guilty before you go to court. You've actually got to go to court to prove that you're right. Now that is about the only time, apart from the terrorism acts, where British law says you're guilty before you've done anything, before you actually get to court. This is taking a lot from the festival, it's stopping the festivals, and it's causing an awful lot of grief. The new bit of legislation that's about to hit us is the acid house one, which is, we've got absolutely nothing to do with acid house parties or anything else. But the legislation that's going to crush those will also seriously affect festivals and any big gatherings of any sort. So life on the road is getting tougher. The councils all over the country aren't providing sites as they should do for ordinary winter living. I think things in general are just becoming more and more repressive, and there's not really very much that travellers can do about it. You know, actually getting this information across the general public is very, very hard.
Okay. Right. We'll take questions after.
Yeah.
Okay, Don Aitken.
Well, as Alex said, I'm a trustee of the Travellers' Aid Trust, which is an organisation which provides a general welfare service for travellers with the emphasis on new travellers. And ever since we were set up in 1986-87, we find that the greatest part of our attention is having to be devoted to the field of legal advice, and not just legal advice generally, but what I might call crisis legal advice. And I'd just like to fill you in on a few things that have been happening in that area. The biggest and the most important is that at long last, after 5.5 years, the trial of the civil cases against Wiltshire Police arising from what happened in the Beanfield in 1985 is coming to court. I actually have a hearing date for that, and this hasn't, as far as I know, been announced before, but the trial will be in the High Court at Winchester, starting on September the 17th this year. The trial is expected to last between 3 and 6 months. There are 40 plaintiffs with claims including assault, unlawful arrest, false imprisonment and damage to property. It has been estimated that if we all win, I should perhaps say that both I and Lynn are among the plaintiffs in that case. If we win, the damages awarded are likely to be of the order of £250,000, which would be the largest single award ever made against a British police force. Obviously, that case being pending, I can't comment on the merits, but I think a lot will come out in that trial, which will shock a lot of people and hopefully inform a lot of people about the way that the police were carrying out their functions in that year. The other thing I'd like to mention is something that Lynn has already brought up, the so-called Acid House Party Bill. That's not actually what it's called. The most interesting thing in many ways about this piece of legislation is its title. It's called the Entertainment Increased Penalties Bill. I think that perhaps reflects a certain way of thought that's behind it. What this is about is increasing the penalties for putting on a public entertainment without a license. The maximum fine is multiplied by 10 to £20,000. There's a provision for the first time for imprisonment. There's also a new provision for the confiscation of profits, which is only likely to be used against large events, much more important in relation to small events. There's a provision for the summary confiscation of all equipment used at unlicensed events. And as Lynn says, it's inevitable that this is going to be used against a very wide range of events, whether they've got anything to do with the Acid House Party scare or not. Second reading on that bill is on March the 9th in the House of Commons, and we do hope that there will be some opposition. The other couple of legal things relating to what happened last year are worth a mention. It's notable that as each different tack they try fails, they bring in something new. And last year there were 2 new unexpected bits of law that they used, both of which involved the local authorities. The first was the action taken by Wiltshire County Council by way of road closure orders to stop people parking on the trucks in the neighbourhood of Stonehenge, not just at the summer solstice, but at the equinoxes and the winter solstice as well. It seems to be perfectly obvious that the purpose of this is to create trouble. The purpose is to make it impossible for people to park on the tracks. Therefore, if they're in the area at all, they have no alternative but to go onto private land, which is something that up to now they've been able to avoid. And thereby trouble and confrontation will be created, and it seems really inevitable that we come to the conclusion that that's what the County Council would prefer. The other intervention was from Salisbury District Council, which made orders under the Public Order Act banning processions within 4 miles of Stonehenge. The interpretation put on that by the police and upheld by Salisbury Magistrates Court, though unfortunately we haven't had a test case in a higher court, is that makes it illegal for more than one person to walk anywhere in the affected area. This, of course, was not applied to the thousands of residents of Amesbury who went shopping during that period, or any of the large number of other people who did other things. It was applied in a discriminatory way against people whom the police wanted to get rid of. It was under those provisions that there were 260 arrests last year, and it's interesting to note that only about half of those were even charged. It's worth reflecting over the years since '85, when this was all going on. There have now been over 1,000 arrests. There are no signs of this going away. But one thing that has changed for the better during that period is I think we've all learned something. And last year we had 260 arrests in circumstances that seemed quite confrontational at one point. But those arrests took place without any violence and without any injuries on either side. And I think people who are interested in Stonehenge have now established a commitment and an ability to avoid violence and to ensure that if the authorities insist on arresting people, those arrests will take place in that way. And I think that's something they deserve some credit for. I understand that this has been and is being actively pursued, and that some of the more dedicated Stonehenge activists are organising more extensive training in the whole area of non-violent direct action in the run-up to this year's events. That's about it as far as I'm concerned, except really to endorse what Lynn said, that things are getting harder. The authorities keep bringing new weapons out of the arsenal. If all else fails, they'll change the law. They're now doing that just as they did in '86 with the Public Order Act. It all really follows up a comment Mrs. Thatcher made in 1985. When referring to what I think were being referred to at the time as the hippies, she said that their life ought to be made as difficult as possible, and that's what's being done. Whether this is a legitimate function for the government to assume in relation to a section of the citizens of this country is a question which we'd like to see discussed.
Right, turn now to Rick Hope, who's going to speak on behalf of the campaign and give you an idea of what's planned.
Thank you. The ban on celebrating the summer solstice at Stonehenge is now 6 years old. The Stonehenge campaign, which I speak for today, is also 6 years old. The dispute in question is concerned with the right to follow a tradition celebrating the solstice that goes back at least 2,000 years before Christ. This year, 1919, sees a campaign to bring back the celebrations, better organised and more sure of our eventual success than ever before. If the British authorities, who are against the celebrations, believe we will give up, they forget a lesson of history all rulers should remember. Suppression breeds sedition, as we have found in Eastern Europe recently. The government ban on the solstice celebrations has brought out the Dunkirk spirit in thousands of people throughout Britain over the last few years. Winston Churchill, who was a Druid, would be proud of the so-called hippies, who for the last 5 years have braved police blockades and terror tactics, all for a just cause. They have used great ingenuity and bravery to survive and defy peacefully the full force of the state, put against them at times with diabolical violence. Since the ban was announced, we estimate some 30,000 people have celebrated the solstice in or around Stonehenge, despite the ban and its attendant police helicopters. That is a major achievement. In the same period, we calculate the authorities have spent about £6 million trying to prevent people from celebrating the solstice at Stonehenge. We do not regard this as an achievement the authorities can be proud of. It is a tragic waste of resources and everybody's time. It is also a national scandal that so many people should be denied their legal rights at such a vast cost. We'd have thought they'd have found a cheaper way of doing it by now. Stonehenge has been described as a national icon. It was given to the nation by Mr. Chubb in 1918, with a stipulation written in the deed of gift, a legally binding document, that the people of Britain should have access to the stones at all times. This ban lies a coach and horses, not to mention the police helicopter, through Mr. Chubb's legal stipulation. However, Stonehenge is not just a national icon, it is a world icon, a site of international importance and significance to millions of people throughout the world. How would the British press react, for example, if the Egyptian government was to surround the Great Pyramids with barbed wire and riot police to deny access to thousands of people? Of course, unlike our government, the Egyptian government would never be so stupid. Judging by the international reaction so far, if the government does not end the ban on the solstice celebration soon, it stands to be the laughing stock of the world. Regarding our international campaign, plans are already well advanced for protests and solstice celebrations to be held outside British embassies and consulates in several major world centres on the summer solstice this year. The campaign is also attempting to finally get the case to the European Court. We sincerely hope that the violent arrests of peaceful protesters will be a thing of the past and aim to ensure that the world will be watching this time. The Stonehenge campaign believes that all sides have learned something in this dispute. We are sure that serious negotiations to end this farce could be successful. We are ready to work towards ensuring peaceful celebrations this year and to organise greater things for the future. With the future in mind, one of our slogans is Bring Back Merry England. The original Merry England period ended with Oliver Cromwell and his Puritan roundheads. They subjected the country to a Christian fundamentalist purge, paying particular attention to the suppression of the dreaded pagans, i.e. non-Christians, thousands of witches were burned to the stake. Today, the authorities may not be burning witches, but we've had enough of the Cromwellian attitudes of this government. We say, bring back Merry England, and stop sending the riot police against people who are only dancing in the fields. Finally, the building of Stonehenge was finished around the year 2000 BC. The Stonehenge campaign intends to cheerfully ensure it won't be 2000 AD before the British government ban on its use is ended. Thank you very much. Now I have a list of events. There's leaflets here, and these events are for your information. I'll read it out and you can take copies. There's plenty of them around. So this is events for 1990. 15th of March was a public meeting at Salisbury City Hall. 20th of March was spring equinox, and that's at 21:18 hours. 1st of June are launch parties for London Walk to Stonehenge. The 1st of June is also the anniversary of the Battle of the Deanfield in 1985. The 2nd of June, walks to Stonehenge start from London, Wales and other major cities in Britain. On the 16th of June, the London to Stonehenge charity bike ride starts. From the 15th to the 25th of June, the Stonehenge Free Festival. Bands from Norway, Berlin and Holland have already asked to be invited. The 21st of June is National News Day. The 21st of June will also see pickets and solstice celebrations of British embassies with Hope Worldwide. On the 17th of September 1990, the trial of supportive civil action was brought against the Chief Constable Wiltshire of the Battle of Deanfield, pogroms in 1985. The trial, which will be held in Winchester, will take between 3 and 6 months. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and finally, Ryan Mockling, one of the Glastonbury Order of Druids.
Don't mind me standing. Well, Alex mentioned at the beginning another title. Yes, indeed, I am Archdruid of the Glastonbury Order of Druids, but I'm also subscribed to the Grand Council of the British Druid Orders, which represents 4 constituent orders of Druids: the Glastonbury Order of Druids, the Secular Order of Druids, the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, and the Ancient Order of Druids. Now this numbers some 3,000 or 4,000 people. Now, I already made a statement previously in which I likened the closing of Stonehenge to at midsummer to the closing of Westminster Abbey at Christmas. And Grand Council of British Druid Orders was formed not only to unite all the Druids in a common policy for creating an atmosphere whereby Druidic solstice celebrations at Stonehenge and other sites might safely and amicably take place in the future, but as all those people who come to Stonehenge at summer solstice, as indeed at other times of the year, winter solstice and the equinoxes, we are of the opinion mainly come in peace to celebrate with us. Everybody who is at Stonehenge at those times will be a congregation of people there, and the Druids, as priests of the ancient Celtic faith, have long time since, as Colin went through, Professor of Archaeology at Cambridge has described Stonehenge now as the proto-Druidic temple. It used to be fashionable one time to say Stonehenge had nothing to do with Druids, it's now acknowledged it does. We have called upon some of our ancient laws for being able to reopen Stonehenge in the future peacefully and legally. In fact, on June the 21st, 1989, this summer last year, the Grand Council of British Druid Orders made a public proclamation on Primrose Hill of a petition which was presented to Her Majesty the Queen 1 year in advance, as has been the custom since 1176, to hold a national Eisteddfod at Stonehenge on June the 21st, 1990, to coincide with a religious gathering of Druids to celebrate the solstice, with prizes awarded for excellence in the following arts: poetry, music, film, art, dance, theatre, healing and philosophy, ecology and natural science, and geomantic archaeology. Now, this is in accordance with legal precedents granted to Druid orders by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I in 1568 and 1594, and ratified by both Houses of Parliament in the reign of Queen Victoria in 1898. It is respectfully submitted by the Grand Council that it lies within their power, within our power, to hold a peaceful and ordered Eisteddfod event at Stonehenge this midsummer, which will not only encourage the arts, but will become in due course a credit to the nation both at home and abroad. We, the Grand Council of British Druid Orders, view the establishment of an English Eisteddfod at Stonehenge as a means laid down within the law, not only for securing a peaceful and orderly event at Stonehenge in 1990, but also as a way of reducing the current impasse, and it's a time-honoured method employed throughout history, managing events at such times as peak demand was currently present. It's also the correct way of upholding the religious rights of Druids, who established at Stonehenge in 1724 and continued annually since 1875. Now, the important point here is that custom and usage of the laws relating to Eisteddfod date back from the time of 1176, Lord Rees, and the first written records we have of Eisteddfod held at Cardigan, and under English law, being 13 years prior to 1189, which is the year of the accession to the throne of Richard I, are therefore deemed to have been exercised since time immemorial. This means that it is a lawful celebration, and thereby, by the same token, having been proclaimed, as is the Welsh Eisteddfod, 1 year